And so, because we have heard from Andrea a couple of times today, I won't give too big an introduction, if that's okay, but I will say that she managed to not mention this in 2022. She was awarded the Corley Medal from the Australasian Wildlife Management Society in recognition of a lifetime of achievements in wildlife ecology and management. And to speak to creating impact in Aotearoa New Zealand science system, please welcome back Andrea Byrom, former co-director of BioHeritage.
Kia ora anō e te whānau. It's lovely to be back up here. I'm going to talk about creating impact. Bruce, you dredged up stuff from my subconscious that I never wanted to go there ever again. There were some painful moments in setting up that challenge for sure. What I want to do is talk a little bit about the bridge to the future, which is going to be Mel's talk. I'm sure of it. She's still writing it, but yeah. Anyway, I'm sort of going to talk about the process of setting it up in the early days and then some of the things that we fought for to really create impact. And when I say fought for, I mean we really did fight some of those fights that we've all heard about here in the last couple of days. And then I'm going to sort of finish on Matua Kevin's wero to us, which was, can we save a tree? And I'm going to ask the question, did we save a tree? So Bruce alluded to the written stuff that we had to submit to MB in 2013, 2014 to get this challenge over the line, but I'm going to go a step further and give a little video of our presentation to MB, our pitch to MB in 2014. It involves myself as a program leader, Bruce is the interim director, James Bewalder, who's here on the slide, who was our inaugural chair of the governance group, and then also Melanie. And it starts off with Mel giving her initial pitch to MB about embedding vision mātauranga in the challenge. So here we go. Sound.
And trying to form links, which is very Māori, so saying to our matua Colin here that I am also of Ngāti Raukawa descent, and forming links for Māori, whakapapa back to our land is inherent in who we are. It's the essence of Māoridom, and so a biological heritage challenge obviously is fundamental to Māori because it incorporates everything that we are, everything that makes us who we are. And I think it's fitting that we start with the VM and our component, because right from the outset this challenge has done all it can, hand on heart, to include Māori and to show that partnership is more than just a treaty principle that's written in a document, but it's actually a principle that can be enacted and shown throughout a challenge and throughout a research bid. And so our challenge was to look at how we could build mātauranga Māori and vision mātauranga Māori, not only vertically through the system but also horizontally. So how could we ensure that Māori had representation at all levels, from governance, management, through the research and the stakeholders and end users, but also across those research themes, so that we could show that Māori worldview is actually a holistic one, that it's not isolated into small research themes. And we've purposely moved away from that model and tried to include Māori as much as possible in the research as researchers standing on their own 2 feet, but then also provide a space for Māori to do what is Māori and to ensure that the science then reflects Māori worldviews.
This was actually a challenge. We're very conscious in preparing a proposal that this was the challenge area that attracted the most public interest during the Great New Zealand Science Project, which preceded these definition of challenges. Yeah. We're talking about that $63 million program galvanising a much, much, much larger effort nationally, and the work we're doing to try and build that community of research, community and public, Māori, business and government to do that. Integration across disciplines, across systems and across the whole impacts pathway.
So we've also recognised in our proposal the range of opportunities, new opportunities. I'm particularly personally excited by this challenge. This is my area of greatest interest. I was born to be in this area. And frankly, the opportunity presented here is a once in a lifetime. I think we all recognise that. It's once in a lifetime, and we'd better get it right.
But I mean, I certainly take your point. I know this is a bit of a bun fight internationally. It's very tempting to go out and just collect lots and lots of genetic data and then figure out a question later. And I think part of what you're getting at with the survey and the function questions is back to programs 2 and 3, which is partly also about nailing down the key science questions in this challenge, and then starting to think about what kind of data or information do we need to collect to answer those key science questions. And so from our perspective, you're quite right, we can't possibly go out and survey everything and survey everywhere, and that's not the intention here. But certainly we intend to harness new technologies going forward in order to answer some of the questions that are going to emerge through the challenge. Oh, wrong way. So what can we take from that? Two things. One is I actually said going forward in a pitch to MB, and we still got the money. And secondly, Mel had short red hair. Anyway, so what did we promise? We promised, look at all that stuff we promised. Convening teams of national expertise, the cross-disciplinary element of it. Partnership with Māori, Mel used the phrase vertical and horizontal. Integration across systems and disciplines and across the impacts pathway, as James said. Bruce called it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He was born to do that. Galvanising national effort, public business, Māori together, new leadership, governance and policy models, breakthrough tools and technologies. So did we actually achieve that? Was there a science breakthrough? Did we create impact? And most importantly, did we save a tree? So I'm just going to go through each of those quickly and talk a little bit about the impacts that I think we made. So one of the first things we need to do, as Bruce has alluded to, is convene these national teams. And so therefore, then the first thing we needed to know was what's actually out there in terms of research funding in this area around biological heritage, and we needed to quantify that in dollar terms. We needed a conversation starter with all the challenge parties that Bruce has described and all of the stakeholders around that, and to understand sort of how other investments were actually aligned with the challenge. And that system fragmentation and some of the problems in our science system that I would argue still haven't really been fixed became very clear. And this figure was really well used. It was a great conversation starter. One team in Tranche 2 used this to figure out that there were 942 different biosecurity related projects around the one that they wanted to create. So it was pretty powerful. The next element of creating impact for us was around partnership with Māori. We've seen a lot of that over the last little while. The language changed quite a bit. I would argue that now we really talk about being Tiriti-led, which is appropriate. And then, as Mel alluded to, there's that horizontal and vertical, ensuring that we had Māori leadership in projects, as well as right across the entire challenge. And we built KPIs. MB gave us a lot of licence and flexibility to operate in this area. It was big ups to them. We really stretched our KPIs out in this space to build capability and capacity and CVs. And Mel and the Kaihotu at the time really worked hard on that on very small amounts of time, and I'll come back to that later. So there was a strong push for investment into that area very early on. We were Tiriti-led eventually, although I would argue at the beginning we weren't. It opened up conversations about Y262 and investing in the mana of mātauranga, as Tami spoke about far more eloquently than I could. There's just a couple of projects that I think of as exemplars in this space. One is the freshwater one that you saw both yesterday and today, around Māori and non-Māori co-creating together, something really powerful. And then also there was the genuinely Māori-led and our kaumātua who ended up leading Project 1.1, again that Tami alluded to yesterday. This was a fight. It was a fight to get that project up and running and over the line. And we had a lot of pushback. Why are we spending money on mātauranga-led? It's not science, that's what they said. But we persisted and we got it over the line, and look what's happened as a result. The next thing that we promised was around this cross-disciplinary collaboration and alignment. And I had a conversation with James Bowalder a couple of weeks ago just in preparation for this talk. And one of the things that he pointed out to me was the real flourishing around social research in the widest sense of the word in some of the projects that we've heard about over the last couple of days, and indeed right over the last 10 years. The exemplar really has to be around Phil and Ocean and the work that they've built there, around invertebrate pests, but also public understanding of gene tech. But, you know, Marie and others have talked about the collaborations with Te Tere Whakamātaki and building that understanding of social licence around gene technologies and so forth. So I think, again, we've built those collaborations upwards and outwards in a way that we didn't anticipate at the time. We said we would be cross-disciplinary, but I would argue we've been inter and transdisciplinary over the years, and that's been very, very powerful. The next thing we did was use that horrible word integration that Bruce also mentioned, integrating across systems, disciplines and the impact pathway. Whatever you want to call it, really what it is building upwards and outwards to that implementation piece, to creating impact on the ground with our communities. And I just wanted in this slide to give a shout out to one of the other investments we made pretty early on, which was around that critical role of knowledge brokers, and also, as Catherine alluded to yesterday, communication specialists, and later on we also brought in people who were experts in impact investment and other sort of aspects around building science communities that are much wider than just doing investigative-led research. I think it was very powerful and incentivised a lot around teams. The Eco-Index team really exemplify this at the moment. So it's building on that early thinking around biodiversity credits and so on. But these weren't seen as science investments initially, and it was a bit of a bun fight to get some of those knowledge broker roles up and over the line. And now lots of organisations have stolen, literally someone told me yesterday that they'd stolen the job description from BioHeritage so they could have a knowledge broker in their institution as well. So great. Bruce alluded to this being a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and really what I want to do actually is shout out to all the old white guys who started off in the challenge, because what they actually did was they helped set it up, but then they really stepped back. And there's two people here on the top of the screen. One of them is Angus, who's in the room, who really exemplifies that for me. And the other one is John Harding, who's an emeritus now at Canterbury University. And so when we wanted to fund Catherine February and Helen Warburton to do their research, we couldn't actually contract them directly because they were on short-term contracts. And so Angus and John stepped up and signed a contract on behalf of Canterbury University, and then they literally handed the money to Helen and Catherine. And we had numerous examples of creative ways to get around the way that the system was broken. I'm not going to make a big deal about the University of Canterbury because it's not just them, it's right across the system. And I was really heartened to hear Sarah speak before about sort of the ways in which that university is thinking about doing things differently off the back of what's been learned in this science challenge. And so what that did is really kick-started the careers of the likes of Catherine and Helen and many other early careers researchers. That's how we got Ngāpi Kārere, the early career network. Sean named that. I remember the day that you named that Ngāpi Kārere, Sean. So there was a whole lot of stuff that happened that was really empowering for early careers, and look what's happened as a result. And I think it's really important that whilst, yes, some of our international science panel alluded to the breadth and the depth of the work that early careers potentially have to do in building these relational projects, if you like. I think it's so worthwhile, and when you're working in a team, it means you can actually get more publications and a greater breadth of publications as a result. So I think actually it's been hugely powerful. We also did some other things like identified knowledge gaps in the system that weren't being filled, and we really in Tranche 2 focused on that right team approach and building teams. The other thing that we promised was galvanising national effort, and really the turning point for us was around Tranche 2 when the MB came to us and asked whether we would host, as a science challenge, the Ngā Rākau Taketake SIF funding. And that was a significant amount of funding and a significant amount of trust that they put in us, partly because we had worked very closely with Māori at a time of quite low trust in the Crown. I think this was one of the investments, if you like, that really exemplifies the integration between biosecurity and biodiversity. And a couple of things really stand out to me is the Te Whakahononga network that's been built. There is kaitiaki out there monitoring in the ngahere, and also related to that, the hapu-centric integrated surveillance framework. So great things come when you bring biodiversity and biosecurity together, and where you actually create a process for co-design and co-implementation of some of this work. James Bawalda mentioned public business and Māori together, and I really do want to shout out to all of the communities and Māori-led groups that have presented over the last couple of days. For me, honestly, Helen said earlier that she's never been so emotional at a conference. I'm going to start crying soon. But yeah, it is actually incredible to see what's happened as a result. So the early thinking around this was flagship sites, just building off what was already happening at place. But that collaboration and those opportunities again built out that much wider network of stakeholders and people that are really interested in the legacy of this challenge. And then finally, what we promised was around new leadership, governance and policy models. And James Bawalda said to me when we were chatting, he said it was like being unwelcome at a wedding when they set up the governance group, because that really was, it was kind of a shot across the bows of the science system. Bruce has sort of alluded to that as well. And so we really pushed the bow down on things like co-governance. Yes, we did it here first. We didn't call it that, like no one's calling it that now either, but that's what we were doing, and I'm really, really proud to have gone down that path. And then Mel and Nick and Amanda and many others really implemented the whole co-leadership models in Tranche 2 as well. So we were genuinely Te Reti-led in Tranche 2, and those values, that values-based building of research was so valuable. And then in terms of the outputs, though, that's also been incredible. And you saw Helen's graph earlier about the BioHeritage publications and the links into policy, and that's a very powerful story to be told. So we had deep linkages into the Roika Māngai, for example. Again, we were the first challenge to put up our hand and say, yes, we will fund a Māori researcher to go and be a part of Roika Māngai. And we have had loads of inputs into government policy. Tami talked about Te Mana o Te Taio, the biodiversity strategy yesterday. But if you go look at that strategy, there's three kind of themes in that strategy that are almost word for word. And there's a few people in this room that had something to do with that. So yeah, we actually pushed out into all sorts of government spaces as well. And around governance research, the likes of what Maria has spoken about as well, we actually turned governance into a research thing in its own right, which is really important. Not to say that wasn't already happening, but the challenge really put it out there. So, did we have a major science breakthrough? I'm going to be real brutal on ourselves and say no, I don't think we did. That doesn't mean that that there isn't great science done, and Phil and Ocean and many others have talked about some of the great things that have almost coming to sort of products to market type thing, so don't get me wrong, it's just that I think, as I said earlier, we would have invested differently if we'd really been aiming for a massive breakthrough the likes of what is needed for predator-free New Zealand. Did we create impact? Yes, absolutely, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Did we save a tree? I actually put a cross on this slide before I came to this conference because I really still feel like the system is against us a bit. But from what I've heard in this conference, I do feel like, and others have said as well, and Matua Kevin said it himself, that actually we have created some great stuff. So have we saved a tree? Well, probably lots of trees have been planted and predators have been killed as a result of some of the work that's been done in this challenge, probably yet to achieve what we were set out to achieve. So, what do we mean by creating impact in the National Science Challenge? I think our greatest impact was systemic. We are now Tiriti-led. That's so valuable going forward for society in general. We built a really inclusive and diverse cohort of researchers and everyone around them. It's much more collaborative. People have inter and transdisciplinary skills. They've got novel skills and disciplines. They're publishing in areas well outside their own field of research. That has to only be a powerful thing. We really changed the culture. And not only that, but we've set it up to be really policy ready. So like Bruce, I have a lot of hope. We need that hope because, as you can see in the top little cartoon there, there's quite a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. We really need evidence-based solutions to a rapidly changing world. And there's also a heck of a lot of people that still think that they know what's best for the New Zealand science system and, you know, what the strategic opportunities are. But they're the kind of people that go, here, I've done my bit, now you do the hard yards. And I think our skills are well set up to help with those hard yards. So before I get kicked off the stage, I just want to give a shout out to a few people. I'm going to start at the bottom actually. I do really want to emphasise that MB gave us a lot of licence to be quite creative with our KPIs and all of that sort of stuff. And they supported the science challenges over the years. It wasn't always easy for them. Thanks also to MB for providing the video for us. It was quite funny to learn that they actually still held it in their archives. There are many others that I just can't name or thank, including the challenge support team. You guys are amazing. Bruce, the inaugural director, you've seen him speak. No more words are needed. Matua Kevin Prime, he was our inaugural chair of our kahui and really the solid, calm presence that we needed at many of those difficult times. And over the years, when things got tough, I would always either ring up or email Matua Kevin and say, Kevin, I really need a karakia. Can you just help me? Like, I just need you to do a karakia for me to calm me down. And he would do one for me. And sometimes, I believe it helped. And then James Bewalder, he was awesome. You know, inaugural chair. He's not here, I don't think, anymore. But yeah, huge shout out to him he spotted that opportunity way back in 2012, 2013, and he was like at it like a rat up a drain pipe, seriously. And then my final shout out before I'm going to get kicked off the stage is for Mel. So thank you very much, Mel, for being such an amazing colleague over the years. Mel obviously became the co-director of the challenge in Tranche 2, and that was a huge important step in my journey to be more sort of Tiriti-led. So thank you for being a great leader. All the leadership and all the Māori stuff that we've seen over the last couple of days really is down to you. And it's true that Māori they shoulder the load twice, right, in their system at the moment. They've got to do all their own work, and then they've got to kind of upskill people like me. And so all I can say is that I now pay it forward in so many places and spaces. All the things that I learned hopefully mean that somebody else doesn't need to shoulder that load quite so much in future. So thank you. That's me. I'll get off the stage now. I'll let Mel talk.
Kia ora, Andrea, and it's right to be emotional. When you think about what we're talking about, ko au te tai ao, ko te tai ao ko au, I am the environment and the environment is me. And so in that fist pump, you basically change over the baton to someone who doesn't have short red hair anymore, but she has the same attitude to speak to crazy and ambitious. Please welcome back Melanie Mark-Shadbolt, co-director of BioHeritage.